Hey there, tubers. Today's video is going to be on the water pump replacement on my 2004 Link-Belt 210LX excavator with an Isuzu 6BG1T engine. So what I've got going here is I had to pull the radiator out the other day for some leaks, and I figured while it's out, this is a good time to do a little preventative maintenance. Now this engine has just over 9,000 hours on it. This is the original water pump, original hoses, everything. So since that radiator's out, which is what takes up this big space here, I figured it'd be a great time to get in here and get this water pump knocked out. Now I've had zero issues with the water pump. It's the original water pump, so you know, at this point, I kind of figure I'm going to have to do it probably sooner rather than later. So I might as well just do it now. So what I'm going to do is pull some of these shrouds off and that fan off and get in there and see what's going on. I've got this safety shroud on the back, and that's held by 5 bolts, one here, 2 here, and 1 down over here. And 13 millimeter will take all those out. Then I'll be able to pull this piece out. Then what I'm going to do is come down here, and these 4 bolts that hold the fan on are 12 millimeter. I'll pull those. I'm going to leave the tension on the belt tight for now, just in case these things want to give me some grief. Then the water pump won't want to spin. So I'll get those pulled. Then I'll come over here, and a 17 millimeter will pull these. I'll back this nut off, and then you can loosen the belt up with that. And I've got the new water pump right here. 8972530281. Now these are fairly expensive. I think this was 700 bucks, which is a chunk of change for a water pump. But now's a great time to be changing it out, so I'm just going to go ahead and spend the money now. So I'll get this shroud and this fan pulled, and then we'll see what it looks like, and I'll get right back with you. Okay. Got those out, no problem. This is what the safety shroud looks like once it's out. And there's the fan. 4 bolts for the fan. And then the 5 bolts that held that safety shield. And I was wrong, they're not 13 millimeters, these are 14 millimeters. I apologize. And then I did loosen up these 2 bolts here, both 17. And then down on the back side, let's see if I can get it in here. Down in here, that's a 23 millimeter. That's what the alternator pivot's on. So you got to loosen that up too. And then this should be good and loose. Back that off. I'll back it off enough to get the belt off. Now I think this just pushes into this pulley. So I left it on. Give me a little bit of leverage to see if I can get this pulley broken free, and then we'll see what's behind it here. So give me a little bit and I'll get back with you. Well, I got those out, and boy am I glad I did this with the radiator out. This pulley and spacer were on there. It took quite a bit to get those off. And I did find a couple of phillips head screws that go in. They were in between these ribs. I didn't see them to begin with. And they screw right into the water pump on 2 sides here. So make sure and get those out. They weren't tight at all. They came right out. But once I got those out, this and the spacer, whoa, it was a pain to get them off, but they're off. So my next step will be is to remove this hose. So we got 2 clamps there, We got the lower radiator hose clamp here, and then there's 5 bolts that go around this, and they're all 14 millimeter. And there's the new water pump, and you'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we'll get those pulled, and then see what she looks like without that. All right, we're moving right along here. Got the water pump out. There is only 4 bolts used here, 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 and here. This one is threaded, but it doesn't get used for anything for some reason. And then these 3 bolts are one length. This one's a long one, so you want to keep track of that. And as you can see here, it's a unique gasket system because we're only sealing this area right here, but yet the gasket comes clear around here, and it's in open air in a couple spots here, so I'm not really sure whether this is to help keep it centered or what exactly when you put it back together. But I'll get that all cleaned up, and we'll get the new one back on there and go from there. Now this little hose that was here, this thing was on there good. So you can either use a 10 millimeter or a Phillips head screwdriver to take those off. And then the other radiator hose that came down on this side is a 7 millimeter or a flathead screwdriver. So I'll get to cleaning and then get this new one put back in. It's really quite simple when this radiator's gone. So I'm glad I chose to do this. Well, I'm finally back. We're a good hour and a half, 2 hours down the road from the last time I talked to you. And that's because of this gasket. That was a bear to get off. I've never had one stuck that bad before. So apparently it was working. It was in there for life apparently. So I ended up wire wheeling this whole thing off. I tried razor blades, scrapers, everything, and I couldn't even budge it. And I had to put a lot of force in that wire wheel to even get it come off. But I got it. And one thing that I'm kind of inquisitive about is this hole here. There's antifreeze behind it, and you can see where it's been leaking. And there's the gasket, and that goes around that hole. But if you look at the water pump, there's no place for it to go on the back. So I know that these engines are used in quite a few different applications, so there must be something down the road that uses that for something. Maybe somebody knows what exactly it's for. Throw it in the comments if you do. But so I guess that's why the gasket comes clear over here. And there's 2 trains of thought. One is gasket sealer on the gasket, and one's just putting the gasket in dry. And I kind of figure if you've got it all cleaned off properly, you haven't gouged the metal at all, and you have got all the old gasket off, then there's really no reason to put gasket sealant on there. And of course you got to make sure you get the proper torque on the bolts. But if you have a nice clean surface and get the right torque, I don't see a need for it. Now in this case, this is a pain to get all the way in here. I might, if I have some, put a really light film around it in this area and this area, or this area, sorry, and go with that. But if I don't have any, I'm just putting it on there dry, and I think it'll be fine. So I'll go look for some sealant. Otherwise, I'll just get this all slapped back together and go from there. There she is, all installed. This was really a easy part of the job. Just those 4 bolts, torque them to 25 foot-pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it's obviously enough. And this would have been a really simple job had it not been for that gasket giving me a fit. But I highly recommend doing this if you have the radiator out for any reason. And this little 90-degree hose here, I had to order, so I'm going to be waiting a few days for that. So I won't quite wrap this project up today. But I also, get down here and show you, ordered a new pulley. And I don't know if the camera's going to pick it up or not, but there's a pretty good groove cutting these. I checked the pulley on the crank and it doesn't show anywhere, but this one is definitely worn. So got one of those ordered. I'll wait for that and the new hoses, and then get that thrown back together. But here's the old water pump, and if you listen, that thing might be on its way out as it was. So again, another reinforcement for me that this was a good idea to go ahead and swap it out. So when my hoses come in and the pulley comes in, I'll finish this project and show you how that goes. So I'm just going to have to pause you for a day or two, and I'll see you then. Well, I'm back. It's been a while. It's not been just a couple days, it's been a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, my first order was shipped UPS and they lost it. So I had to reorder everything and wait for them to come in again. But fortunately, this time they actually showed up. So what I've got here is a water pump pulley that replaces this one. And the part number for that is a 1136411960. Then I've got a little 90-degree hose here that goes from the water pump up to the thermostat housing, and that is a 8972242040. And then I have the upper and lower radiator hoses. The upper one is a KRH 1362, and the lower one is a KRH 1363. So now that I've got these, we can get this thing for the most part back together, other than the radiator. So I'll get started on that. I'll probably do this little hose first, get it on. I'm going to reuse these clamps. These are just a simple wire clamp, and I think they're adequate for that. So I'll just get those popped off back on this, and then I'll show you here where it belongs. Boy, in the last couple of weeks we've got a ton of dirt blown in here, but I'll pull these rags. It goes right in here, so hopefully that won't be too big a deal. Get that cleaned up a little bit better there, and get that slapped on, and then I'll come back and show you what's next. That was a pain in the butt. I kind of half expected it to be, simply because the water pump was in there already, and that's such a short 90 there, that I knew it was going to be a pain. But man, was it a huge pain. I think in hindsight, even though I didn't have it, I maybe should have waited to put the water pump on, but from all the dust that's blown in here, I'm glad I did. But it might be easier if you had the water pump out to put it on this side and then try to line it up. I don't know. I mean, you'd be trying to get this on and trying to hold your gasket and get the bolts in. It might not be any better to do it that way, but this way was a workout. I did try this 2 different ways. I mean, it looks like a 90 exactly the same each direction, but when it fit on there, you can see there's a little bit of gap right there. It's tight on the back side. This one's tight all the way around. So I swapped it to see if there was a difference, and there's not. I thought maybe this white dot represented something like front or back or whatever, but as far as I can tell, it made no difference either way. So at this point, I'll get these tightened up. You can see that they're a Phillips head or a 10 millimeter. And I'll get these tightened up, and then we'll put the pulley on. All right, so here's the old water pump pulley. And the reason I bought the new one is because I thought this was overly grooved in here. It's very concave. But once I got the new one, it's similar. It's not as deep, but it is concave for the first 3/4 of this V here. So I'm guessing that that must be to allow the belt to sit in there and not bottom out. Maybe it hits this thicker metal down towards the bottom as it wears, and it won't ever actually bottom out. So I don't know that I necessarily needed to buy this. Fortunately, they weren't overly expensive, so I'm going to replace it anyway since I got it. But I don't think this was something to be overly concerned about. So with that, I'll throw this on here like such, and then there's these two little screws, Phillips head, and they'll go in these two holes that are opposite one another. I just got to find the right spot, and then I'll screw those in. Once I get those screwed in, then this piece here, it's got a nipple on one side and nothing on the other. This flat back goes on here, and then it gives you the room for the bolts to go in. And then this nipple goes through the fan center, keeps it centered. So I'll get these two screws in. These 4 bolts are what came out of the water pump, and they'll come up against this extension right here. These are 12 millimeter, and then I'll get these put on, and we'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Be right back. I got the water pump pulley on there, and these 2 screws were not tight at all when I went to pull the old one apart. So I don't know that there's really anything other than aligning and helping pull this pulley on over this nipple here, because it was fairly tight, especially once I started getting to the bottom. I had to kind of walk back and forth to get this thing to go on all the way. So I got that. I got the belt on. This is a good time to get that on. It's still loose, as you can tell. And then come over to this piece and just make sure that this area here is clean. Not that it matters. You can kind of see how far on that nipple goes. It's not that far, but you don't want dirt or something impeding this sitting on there. So then just pops on like that. You can line these holes here for the bolts up with the pulley holes, and then it'll leave these 2 screws out in the open here on one of these slots. So then come over and grab the fan, and it just goes over that like so. We'll get the holes lined up, and then grab these bolts and thread them through. And I couldn't find a torque spec on these, so I'm just going to go with the good and tight theory, and I think that should be good enough. And I'll get these all tightened up, and then we can tighten that belt up, and this project should just about be wrapped up. I think I might actually put this piece back in here. So I'll get this tightened up, and we'll see what I end up doing next. Alright, so I was able to get these tightened down. I held the fan blade with one hand and tightened with the other. Another way you could do it is actually tighten this belt up prior and then tighten these, but either way works fine. So now I'm going to tighten this belt up, And this bolt and this bolt are 17 millimeters. And down on the back side here is a 23 millimeter. And to get this to the proper tension, I want you to push right here with about 20 pounds of force. And you should be able to only move this 1/4 to 1/2 of an inch. So you just got to find a spot to pull a tape off of it, get it up to the top, or however you like to do it. Put about 20 pounds of force and see where it ends up. So I'll get that tightened up, and then I'm going to put this piece back in here, and a couple of hoses, get them started. Since I still don't have the radiator, I'm not going to tighten them down, but I'll get them on there, and that should just about wrap this up. So see you in a minute. Alright, so the next piece that'll go on is this one, and it'll go on this upper thermostat housing piece just like so. This piece will go on the back side here, bolts there, and bolts here. And then this piece has a bushing and 2 dampeners. And you want to make sure that you get the collars right so that they go through and sit in there the right way. And that'll be on both these. So I'll get this thrown on here and show you what it should look like. There she is installed. Everything's just loosely in here so I could show you what's going on. This first bushing has a little collar on it, and it'll go through this shroud piece here. The second one has a little collar on it, and it'll actually face this one's collar, and it goes through this piece that holds the safety shroud. And then your bushing that's in the middle only allows you to clamp this together so tight. And then these rubber dampeners will take up any of the vibration that either the shroud or this piece will have. So these are all 14 millimeters. I'll get these all tightened up, and there's no torque spec for them, but these two here are steel bolts going into an aluminum housing. So you'll want to make sure and get them snug, but don't over tighten them. The rest of these are metal on or steel on steel, so you can get these all tightened up good. And so I'll get those tightened up, and then that pretty much wraps it up. I'll just throw some radiator hoses on the upper and lower, and I'll just put them on temporarily until I get the radiator back to put this all back together one final time. So with that, that's the water pump removal and installation. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Otherwise, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.